Welcome to Leadership Synergized, my friends, where we explore purpose-driven leadership shaped by faith, service, and authenticity. Today, we're joined by Senior Pastor Anthony Payton, a father, grandfather, husband, entrepreneur, and beloved leader of Fort Wayne, Indiana's Come As You Are Community Church. From a jail cell in Mississippi to 3 decades of ministry, Pastor Payton's story is one of redemption, resilience, and faith. Through the testimony Pastor Payton is about to share, you will walk away inspired, challenged, and reminded that God truly uses every step of our journey along His path of purpose. It is my honor to introduce to you Pastor Anthony Payton. Pastor Payton, welcome to Leadership Synergized, my friend. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us.
Oh, it's an honor to be with you, as always. It's an honor to be with you, Kevin.
Well, Pastor Payton, for those that are joining and you're getting to meet Pastor Payton for the very first time here in our program, what an outstanding life that he has led and lives and bringing faith and God to the masses. And he's also a businessman. We're going to talk about melding those aspects with Pastor Payton, but he's got so much energy and vibrancy to bring in a positive way that there's not a one of us listening that's not going to walk away feeling energized and motivated to move ahead. But Pastor Payton, I don't want to do you any injustice, my friend. Talk a little bit and introduce Anthony Payton to us.
Well, as you said, Anthony Payton, I've been pastoring now for probably almost 30 years. 30 years.
Wow.
Accepted Christ in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and journeyed to Fort Wayne, Indiana to go to college, and had the privilege of being married now. With Sandy and I have been married 39 years, 2 kids, and 2 biological kids, and a host of spiritual kids, and 13 grandchildren now.
Wow.
Just had my another granddaughter on 2 days ago.
Congratulations. And she's doing well, I assume.
She is doing well. She's 9 pounds, 9 ounces, 20 inches long.
She was born ready for Frosted Flakes, right?
She was ready. She's ready.
What was the name she was given?
Sierra.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, Pastor, we've had just some brief discussions from time to time. One of the things I've come to realize, at least from my perspective, there's no one on this earth closer to God than those infants, those newborns, and then the youthful children that we have. And we see that in their eyes each and every day.
That is a miracle. If you ever want to know if there's a God, look in the face of an infant. That's it. Yes, I agree with you, sir.
I think George Strait probably said it best when he wrote and sang, "I saw God today."
Yeah.
What a way to correlate that. Pastor, so from Mississippi to Fort Wayne, Indiana, talk a little bit about your decision and journey. That's quite the drive and distance in miles.
Well, yeah, it is in more ways than one. I'll give you the short version. Since I accepted Christ as Lord and Savior of my life in Mississippi in a jail cell. The gentleman that was the chaplain there, Buck Man, was a Gideon, and he and all other Gideon men and then their wives, he would minister to the men that were in that jail, and the wives would minister to the ladies. And so after being there for a while, I kind of lingered behind, and because I heard him say something about you got to be born again. And so I asked him that evening, I said, what do you mean by being born again? He led me to the Roman road of salvation in that jail cell. And at that time, I wrote in a journal, went back to that cell, this is as free as I've ever felt. And subsequent to that, he began to ask me why I was there. I told him why I was there and all that stuff. Well, good stuff, but all that stuff. And he urged 18 business leaders in the community that was also Gideons to sign their name on a petition to ask the judge to let me out. They signed along with their wives, and took it before the judge. And the judge looked at the names on the sheet, looked at me, looked at the names on the sheet, and looked at me, and let me out into their can. And for the next 3 years, Buck, his name, discipled me, poured his life into my life. Would literally cross the tracks, sit on the porch of my grandmother's shotgun shack, and teach me Bible. When I felt like God was calling me into the ministry, uh, he took me to the bus station and bought the ticket, one-way ticket. And I never forget the words he says. He says, Anthony, I believe that God has a plan for your life, a call on your life. You have to be careful of 3 G's. I said, okay, Buck, what is that? Girls, glory, and gold. Mm. And I came here, got a job, Fort Wayne, got a job, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's a powerful story. So, Pastor, you loaded the bus or you headed out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, coming into Fort Wayne. Were you still questioning this walk with God, or did God have you fully at that point?
Oh, he had me fully at that point. I mean, I was all my chips was in the center of the table. Everything else I had tried had not worked, and I felt like I needed to give him the same energy and the same commitment that I had given my previous life before I accepted him. I was all in. There was no turning back. I knew that encounter and the way that God did everything. I don't think that everybody has to have, quote unquote, a dramatic experience to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. But that's what it took for me. And God sealed it. It was done. That life was over, And so I came knowing that I didn't know whether I didn't know that I was going to be a pastor, or anything like that. But I knew that what lied ahead of me was what God wanted for me, and I was going to trust him with it.
Well, Fort Wayne, Indiana, for those of you not aware, located in northeastern part of the state of Indiana. Pastor Watt, roughly an hour and a half northeast of Indianapolis, the state capital, give or take a few hours, a few minutes, I should say.
About an hour and a half, yeah, exactly.
And currently, Pastor Payton, you're a senior pastor, but you spent a lot of your time with the Come As You Are Community Church there in Fort Wayne.
Yes, I've had the honor to pastor the church for 30 years now. My wife and I are committed to that ministry there. We both came into it when it only had 12 members. And God has grown the church both numerically as well as spiritually, and more importantly, spiritually. And so we are in the process of stepping down and turning it over to some gentleman and his wife that we've had the honor of mentoring for a while now. So
talk a little bit, Come As You Are. That seems to be open arms just to represent Jesus and God are waiting for you. And, as I reflect just back a little bit on the maturation process that God's allowed me in life, and I say allowed because I did plenty for him to kick me off the path many, many, many years ago. And moons ago, sometimes I kind of felt like maybe I wasn't wanted because I didn't have that perfect life that had been led that I perceived others had.
Mm-hmm. Well, the name itself, here's how awesome God is and how he works and how he brings things together. When I came to Fort Wayne and started my journey, my spiritual journey, there was a gentleman in Hattiesburg, Mississippi that had a radio broadcast. He was a preacher, L.W. Bolton. And when I came here, I was familiar with him. Later on, he came to Fort Wayne. True story, came to Fort Wayne.
Oh, wow.
And started a church. The church he started was Come As You Are, Greater Come As You Are Community Church. He took a larger church in St. Louis. So guess who was offered that church? I was.
Wow.
And so we kept the heart of the name, Come As You Are, and we, as at Come As You Are Community Church, it was Greater Come As You Are Missionary Baptist Church when he started it. We just took it and just made it more succinct and said Come As You Are Community Church. And it's amazing. We both are from Hattiesburg. We did not know one another while we were there. God led him here to start this church. Yeah, and a matter of fact, we was together a couple of weeks ago, and he took a larger church in St. Louis, and now he's retired and back in Hattiesburg. And I feel like God sent him here to get this started, just so that I would have something when it was time.
What an amazing
So
story. You lived in the same city, community, didn't know one another. You had to come to Fort Wayne to meet, so to speak, but yet you were aware of who he was by
I was
following him a little bit. Yeah.
I was aware who he was. He had a very great radio broadcast at that time. Everybody in the city listened to it. His family was well known, but we had never personally met. And so when he left and went to St. Louis, they had an interim pastor between him and I. And when he left, it was a thriving church. And then the interim pastor, there's some things happened and got down to about 12 people. And then I came in. At the time, I was working as a mental health therapist at a mental health hospital here in the city. And I came in, and I knew when I walked in the building that this was going to be my first church to pastor, and probably it was going to be the last church that I pastored. So
Where did that sense come from that because in today's era for individuals to stay in a job 3, 4, 5 years of any type, that's a longevity today.
yeah, it is, and you're right. And I hate to admit it, because even in ministry, it's this small church become a stepping stone to me to get to a larger church and that kind of flavor. But for me, that was not the case. I walked in that building. They asked me one of the trustees asked me if I would come over and preach, it's because they was looking for a pastor, and he said they didn't have any money, 12 people. I said, sure, I'll come over. And I walked. I never forget the Sunday that my wife and my 2 kids walked into that church. And it was like God saying, this is going to be your first pastor. And I went back. Let me tell you how committed I was to that. So I preached there about three Sundays. And I went back and I talked to my wife. I said, I think God is saying this is going to be the church that I'm supposed to pastor. And she said, okay. I said, I think I need to go ahead and put my resignation in at Park Center, take the family on a vacation, and prepare for that. And I never forget, she says, well, Tony, you never said anything that God wanted us to do that did not come true, so let's do it. So I went back to Park Center, the hospital I worked at, and I said to them, I'm going to resign. I'm going to take the time that I have for vacation, etc. Mind you, I had a large caseload. I had over 100 people on my caseload there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they tried everything to convince me, well, can't you do both? I said, no. And she said, well, they're going to be able to pay. I said, no, they haven't even offered me the church yet. I just believe that's what God wants me going to happen, and I need to be ready. And so I called a friend who was the head of security for the Radisson hotels at that time. And I said, hey, Sim, I don't have any money. I just resigned from a job. I want to take my family on a vacation. He said, let me get you a room. He got me a room, a suite in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
And first time I had ever been there, and I haven't been back since. And the last day of that vacation, the only man that was a part of that church called me, Mr. Riley, and said, we met and we just feel like that you are the person that to be the pastor. Would you consider pastoring the church? And I said, yes. I had some speaking engagement. At that time, I was very much involved in Promise Keepers. I had several speaking engagement with Promise Keepers. And I accepted the church and came back and rolled up my sleeves. And then my wife, who worked at North American Van Lines at the time as a dispatcher, said, you're going to need some administrative help. I said, I only got 12 people. What kind of administrative help I'm going to need? But sure enough, she resigned, and we both worked there at the church when they could only pay $25 a week. The speaking engagement that I had with Promise Keeper, I spoke on the platform with Dr. Maxwell and others, and some people were there, and they heard me, and they kept me busy the whole year while I was making only $25 a week from the church.
Wow. What Another great story, Pastor. And as I'm thinking and listening to you and correlating, great example of truly being still and letting God take the lead in that regard. From your wife's confidence she expressed to you and the travel to Green Bay, that didn't make you a Packers fan for life, or
Did
did
not
it?
make me a Packer fan.
Certain things we got to hold to ourselves, right?
That's exactly right.
But then for the church to be working in the backdrop, well, did that weigh on your mind at all when you were in Green Bay for that vacation before that phone call came?
It did. I was asking myself, are you? Did I hear from God? Did I really hear from God? Am I doing something? Because I had two young kids, and the job I left, the benefit package. I had kids that needed insurance, et cetera, that kind of stuff. So that it was, I needed that. Uh, but I believed, I really believed that that's what God wanted me to do, and that's 30 years later, that's exactly what He wanted.
I love it. What a great and I what a great Anthony Payton walk in faith and story from God's perspective. And Pastor Payton, when you reflect back to that window and era in time, almost a full century ago, right? It was at least
Right?
in a different century. And you look at Fort Wayne and the faith focus then versus now, and you look at your church then versus now. How do you compare and contrast?
That's a very good question, because so much of the church in general has changed. As again, back then, as I go back to the Promise Keeper movement, the men's movement at that time was at the peak. There were a lot of churches that were doing this whole racial reconciliation. That the spiritual aspect of the church was across the board was being championed by men and women of God like I had never seen before. Uh, and then now on the post side of COVID, so much has changed politically, so much has changed socially, so much has changed spiritually in terms of what we do. So if I was to give an answer to that question about what I see now, I see that the church in Fort Wayne is really trying to find or reconnect with its mission.
Mm.
I think the church across the country, in the Western world especially, is is struggling to connect with mission. We have become political. We have become this. We that. I'm reading a book now, and one of the lines said, "Our stage shows, a worship stage show, match Vegas shows, but we are not making disciples."
Mm.
And I think we've lost that track in our mission, that we're not making disciples. So in my observation, that discipleship piece here, I have this construct where I believe that leadership has to have a prophetic construct, and I mean not just from a foretelling, but a forthtelling. Kind of like the tribe of Issachar. What is it that we should do now? And how does that impact the future as much as God wants us to know about that? And from that, there has to be a pragmatic system or pragmatic strategy to get that done. And I think in many ways we've lost that prophetic edge about it, and as a result, we don't pragmatically do anything that produces disciples. And as a result of that, the church is basically just trying to find its footing. So when in the absence of leadership, which that vacuum, everything becomes the norm. So we get invested in this and get invested in that, and we don't truly make disciples. That's where I see we are. I think when God calls a man, He calls him to purpose. He calls him to a passion about that purpose. He calls him to preparation for that purpose. He calls him to a place. He calls him to people. He calls him to pain. He calls him to perseverance, and He calls them to the ultimate prize that He has for them. It was for the hope that was set before Him that He endured the cross. That prize, that sense of what's on the other side of this, that we have lost in that equation for my estimation.
We're speaking with Pastor Anthony Payton, senior pastor, I should say. He's also a businessman and an author and a wonderful family man and a great, great leader that's impacted many individuals very positively. And Pastor, again, thank you so much for being with us on Leadership Synergized. Thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Synergized. I pray that today's conversation with Pastor Anthony Payton stirred something deep within you, reminding you that no path is beyond redemption, no story too broken for grace. If this episode blessed you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, walking in faith, and showing up for the people and places God has called you to serve.